one of the biggest things I'd say to bring is like one of those little, I don't know what they're called, like stain remover dudes, like the little stain remover sticks. I don't know what they're called, but those are super nifty because you'll spill on your white shirts a lot. So if you have one of those, and you can kind of get it taken care of, and then when you wash things, you'll be able to hang it up and it should come out really well. That's something that's almost essential, I'd say. I kind of made the mistake of getting a really, really big raincoat and bringing it to Japan. And while it does rain a lot, it's not very convenient to have like a super big trench coat. So I ended up actually just buying a Japanese rain suit. And while you look kind of ridiculous in like these rainproof pants and like a rainproof like jacket thing that match, like you look kind of like a big Teletubby walking around. Because usually they're like purple or gray, but they're super nifty and they keep you really, really dry. And then as soon as you go inside someone's house, you just take it off, and then all your clothes are dry, you look nice, you're great, you're good to go. So that's something I'd actually probably recommend waiting until you get to Japan, is getting a raincoat. Or at least a really big raincoat. I'd probably have some sort of like jacket or like windbreaker or something like that for the MTC at least. Bring taco seasoning. I missed Mexican food so much in Japan. Bring taco seasoning, and you will be forever grateful.
The Japanese people are so kind, and they're very polite. And a huge part of their culture is saving face. So even if they totally don't understand what you're saying, they'll be like, oh, your Japanese is so good. So I feel like the more compliments I got, the more I knew I needed to work on my Japanese. But they're so nice, and they'll do anything for you. We had so many instances where we were lost, or we didn't know what the signs meant because we couldn't read kanji, and people would go out of their way to help us, and they would drop everything they were doing to make sure that we were okay. And so there's such a giving, such a caring community. They give a lot of gifts and expect nothing in return, and that was a huge part of their culture. Surprisingly, I didn't feel like I had a lot of culture shock when I first went to Japan. And I think it's because I expected it to be so different that it wasn't as different as I thought it would be. Coming back to America after the mission has been a lot more of a culture shock to me, but that might just depend on the person. So usually and this isn't the rule for all missionaries, but usually we would try and set up appointments like at the church or something. But I have heard other people, it's a matter of opinion, I've heard other people say like, no, absolutely get in their home if you can. If not, then try and do lessons in a member's home or something. So when you first walk in the door, there's something called a genkan. And it's like a first step, and it's lower than the other, like the main floor of the house. So there's just a little step right there. And you go in there and you have to take off your shoes, and you can't step back in the genkan before you walk on the first step. And so you take off your shoes, and you have to be wearing socks or nylons or something. Don't be barefooted. And then you turn your shoes around so they're facing the door. But while you do all of this, you can't turn your back to the host who's in the house. So sometimes that was kind of hard. We didn't eat with the members a whole lot. Like some missionaries eat with members every meal. That was definitely not the case for us. But when members did feed us, they usually fed us way too much. We're like, oh no, we're good, we're full. And they're like, oh, you have another, they have a thing called betsubara, which means you have another stomach for like dessert or something. So even when you're full, they'll feed you more. And usually we would cook at home. You have an hour every day. But like in one area, we lived in a huge area. And the trains didn't come through very often. And so if we left, it would take way too much time to go back just for dinner. So we'd usually eat at like a 7-Eleven or a store around there. 7-Elevens have safe food. It's not quite like 7-Elevens in America. They have fresh food. They are so clean. Japan is such a clean country. One of the things that I thought was so funny is that it's really hard to find garbage cans in Japan. Like, you just don't see garbage cans, but there's no garbage on the street. So you have to take your garbage with you and throw it away at home eventually. Water is fine. You can drink water from a tap and it's okay. There aren't a lot of drinking fountains in Japan, but they have vending machines everywhere. Just on the side of the road, like anywhere you can find a vending machine. For groceries, it depends on your companion, and you can work this out with your companion. But with me, usually when we had an apartment with 4 sisters, then we would just like switch off with the other sisters who would buy groceries one week and who would buy the other week. But sometimes sisters don't like the food you choose, so they can buy their own food. But shopping tips, make sure you buy fruits and vegetables, which are kind of expensive in Japan, but it's worth it. You need to stay healthy, and you need the vitamins and minerals that vegetables and fruits will give you. Don't spend your money on junk food. It's not good for you. Yeah. Usually we would just go to the grocery store. Sometimes by the train stations, then they'll sell fresh produce grown locally if it's like during the summer, or if like peaches are in season, and then it's really good to buy those there. You ride bikes every day. If you're going like long distances, then you take the train usually, but other than that, you ride a bike every day. Some days we don't ride the train at all. Some days, like in one area I lived in, we lived kind of far from the mission home, and so it would take like 3 or 4 hours to get to the mission home, and we'd have to go there for conferences, stuff. But that was probably the longest I ever had to be on the train, like 3 or 4 hours.
So Nagasaki was actually the first area I was assigned to as a missionary. And that was extra special to me because my dad actually was called and served as a missionary in the Fukuoka mission as well. And so when he heard I was going to go to Fukuoka, he told me all the different areas he had served in, and Nagasaki was one of them. And so I got to serve there as well. And Nagasaki, you know, most people have heard of Nagasaki because the atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Well, one of them was. And so I've known of people who think that it's deserted because of, you know, the radiation or whatever that they think is lingering there a bit. That's not the case. It's actually rebuilt. It's a thriving city that has a fairly large population. And a lot of Japan is like this, but Nagasaki especially is very hilly, and it kind of forms a valley. And so instead of being kind of spread out in this with the epicenter and the city expanding outwards, it's actually more like a, whatever you call that. It's very narrow and long. And so if you're on the northern side of Nagasaki, it can take a long time to get all the way to the southern part of Nagasaki because of all the stoplights and everything else. And so that's kind of unique in the way that the city is organized. What's nice, well, what's different also is they have a streetcar system they laid out that goes all the way down. Because it's just a line, so it goes from the northern part of the city all the way down to the southern part of the city, and so that's convenient in terms of access, and it's just right on the roads, so cars can go over the tracks if they need to turn and all of that, and it's a very affordable. Public transportation in general and in any place in Japan is very well laid out. The infrastructure for public transportation is probably the best I've seen anywhere in the world in terms of just how it's laid out and the system they have for it. They're very good about it, and so that's how most people travel. Probably more people use public transportation than personal cars or vehicles. Nagasaki, as I said, was kind of in a valley. And as it's expanded, you know, people have had to expand up onto the hills. And some of these hills are extremely steep. And so you'll see these long winding staircases going up these hills to get to these different houses. And Nagasaki, as other places as well though, has a large aging population. Japan as a whole has an aging problem. There's a lot more old people than there are young people. But because of that, there's all these old people living in these homes that you have to take these massive flights of stairs to get up to, that you're starting to see these mini gondolas almost, or like these chair things that go up the handrails that you can sit on, that old people can sit on, and it'll like take them up kind of like a ski lift or a ski gondola to where they need to, because otherwise they're not going to be able to get from their house down into the city, or if they even manage to get down, they wouldn't be able to get back up because it'd just be too much work. And so that's kind of a unique sight to Nagasaki, is just all the hills and the stairs, and the Mission is known for one of the worst biking areas just because of how hilly it is. Admittedly, so after I moved out of Nagasaki, I never had a problem with my bike because everything was a piece of cake compared to riding my bike around Nagasaki. The people there, compared to anywhere else, each place has their own kind of dialect, their accent, and so they end sentences a little differently. But I feel like there wasn't really a whole lot of difference in terms of how they live their lives.